spirit, that's something that can happen very quickly. If you're not paying attention to the spiritual atmosphere that you are in, something other than God, something other than the Holy Spirit can enter in and cause harm. And we want to be in a position, not where we're, oh my God, kind of like, I'm just looking everywhere. That's a whole other type of distraction. But it has to be a God awareness. It has to be something that says, I know when something enters into my presence and it's not God. And that's important because we're engaged in battle. If any military force, the smallest to the largest, one of their biggest things is surveillance. Why? Because I want to see and be aware of what's going on around my territory, because I may have to engage in battle and I want to be ready. I want to see that thing coming from a distance and have a strategy to deal with it. That's why spiritually, we can't get in this state of fainting to the point where we're no longer aware of what the reality of our environment is, because that is dangerous in the natural, is dangerous in the spirit. And when I was looking at, like, what is the meaning of March? Of course, as a month, it talks about being quick and nimble and ready and active and alert and prompt. And that's kind of made sense to me, because when we get into like March, it's a little bit before spring really kicks in. And what you notice, like in gardens or in certain places, a lot of pruning is going on. Like things are happening because once the atmosphere switches, things happen rapidly. Like, sometimes when you get out of winter and you're getting into spring, one day you would see a tree and it had no leaves and barely looked like it was alive. And a week later you go by and it's blooming and you're like, what just happened? The atmosphere shifted. And we have to be in that mode when we think March. And as a verb, March is what? Moving in military order, which means when you say military order, when you say military anything, that means there's a level of instructions coming down from a commander. If I'm distracted, if I'm all over the place, if I'm not sure where I'm supposed to be, guess what? When the command is given, I won't know what to do. I may not even hear the command. I wouldn't even receive it. So we have to be aware of our atmosphere, but we also have to be listening for a command, because in the atmosphere, spiritual and natural, there's a lot of noise. If you're on the road and you're driving, especially if you're on a major highway, there'll be all kinds of noise. But you got to be aware if you hear an ambulance. You got to be aware if you hear a fire truck. You got to be aware if you hear a police siren. Because why? That would mean something might be happening that needs your attention, because you may have to make a detour, you may have to take a different route, you may have to be somebody involved in help, you may have to be receiving help. So you need to be aware when certain alarms and certain noises, and there are certain noises that just don't need your attention. So that's why, to be able to move in military order, we have to be listening for the commands. Are those the commands applying to me? If it's no, you keep doing what you're doing. If it's yes, okay, I need to be listening for the next instruction. And then March is a noun, so interesting, because of course, a measured and uniform walk. We know in military terms, everybody moves a certain way. You don't want to, if you're in a platoon, you want to be moving a certain way. You have specific orders for the individual soldiers, but you got specific orders for the team itself, for the military. So everybody has to be able to move at a measured pace, but uniformity too. They may all have different tasks, but they have to move in uniformity. And they have to be able to advance, keeping in pace with each other. Isn't that interesting? That's when you think about anything that's kind of has to move in unity, a marriage, an organization, there's got to be, a keeping of time, of moving with. So whether you take a big company like Apple or a little mom and pop shop, there are some things that they have to have in place to make sure that every employee, every user of their product, every shopper, whatever it is aware of how that business operates. If you have a mom and pop shop, and there are no operating hours or anything like that, they may miss most business because no one going by will know, well, exactly what are your hours of operation. If I can't count on your uniformity and that kind of keeping of time and how you move and how you work, well, I may just stop going by altogether, because every time I go, you're either closed, you're out to lunch, and there's no uniformity. Same thing with Apple products or a major company. Most people in all the decades of big companies, whether it's Apple, most people, because most of us use, they know when a new product's going to be launched before it's even announced. Because why? Because of this uniformity of this company and their customs and how they move and how they do things. The people are already prepared for when the next item, instruction thing comes before they even say a word. That's being tuned in to the command coming down, whether it's audible or not. And if that's true in the natural realm, think about it in spiritual terms, that you, because of your relationship with God, can sit knowing, okay, I hear a lot of voices, but I'm hearing God's commanding voice above all. And I know how to move and how to act and how to advance and how to hold still until I get my next instruction. That's one of the meanings of march when it comes to, as a noun, you have to advance from one halting place to another. You see a lot of that in the military, right? A lot of times regular citizens say, well, I don't understand why they just go in and do this. Why would they have to stop here and stop there and stop there? A lot of times that's preparation along the way. That's getting men and arms in strategic places along the way. Before they even get on the actual direct battlefield, they start putting and placing, and it may look as if this person is completely stopped, but they're actually in preparation mode for the battle ahead. And so when a lot of people may find themselves in what is called like this halting place, because you're going to go to the next place and you may have another assignment and you have more instructions, but you're in this place. And while you're there, sometimes people are looking like, yeah, she hasn't moved in X amount of time. I don't think she's doing anything. I think she's wasting her life. I think, he doesn't seem to have what it takes to become, quote unquote, a success, or he just doesn't seem to be able to get himself moving. What's going on? And I think what we have to realize is the halting place may not be what we think it is. Because when Jacob, wrestled with the man, and he says, I will not let go until you bless me. His life was being transformed. It changed his name from Jacob to Israel. But he was in a place of, like, I could say distress, fear. He was on this journey, and now here he was struggling, and he came out of that with this limp, but he was about to go into his next place on that destination, towards that destination. That is kind of being in this position where you might be in a halting place, a place that leaves you limping. Because when I was reading through this, and I'm like, halting, it actually means, because we know it means like, okay, you make a stop, right? Or it's like that there's a slowdown. If you're in traffic, you may be thinking, why is the traffic halting? Like you might, like if you get caught on a long highway and you can't really see far ahead to see, but you just know that the traffic is slowed down and you're like, I don't know, 80 cars behind. And you're in that position. Now nothing's wrong with your car, right? But you are still in a halting position. And one of the meanings for halting, and I looked it up in different versions in Strong, it's adversity. Someone may be facing adversity, and that is a halt. That's a halting position. And we know that's not the end. Job faced adversity, but that was not his end. That halting position was not his end. And I'm looking at this thing today, it could mean lame. All the things that most of us are like, ooh, I don't like those words. Because it just seems as if but The halting, that means lameness. That means, something's not functioning the way it should. But you know what? It also means, and when I was looking at that, the implication of that, to pass over. So you may be in a certain place, and it looks like this is a place of halting. This is a place where, and it's well known because it says there's a passing. And a lot of times when we get to this place of halting, there's a decision to be made, right? So we don't want to be multiple opinions, especially if we're people of prayer. We don't ever want to be that person who says, okay, I see this and that. I don't know if I believe God or not. You know what I'm saying? Like you're doubting if God says, when you pray, be sure, don't be of multiple opinions. Don't be, believe that you have what you ask for. And James says the same thing. When you ask me for wisdom, when you ask, just believe, don't doubt. And sometimes that's hard, right? Sometimes we don't see how we're going to pass over something. We don't see how we're going to make that way through. But that's exactly what, if we're in that marching position, we have our marching orders. Okay, things may not seem completely aligned. There may be some lameness. There may be some, limping. There may, depending on what your journey looks like. But there's also the ability to pass over, to spring ahead. That's what the leaping is. And to surge out of the struggle. And even from that prostrate place, face down, when you're thinking, good Lord, I've been face down. That is a posture of prayer if we choose to make it so. You can be face down and just face down, or you can be face down and praying. And that prayer of prostration, from prostration, will keep us out of the frustration that could cause us and lead us to faint.